Hey, everybody. I am excited for this episode of Alcohol Free Radio. I get a chance to talk to Uzair Chutani from Acceler8 Labs, who is our partner in digital marketing agency. So a little bit of a different topic, but we get to dive into the intersection between what's going on with brands and beverage and non-alc, low and no, as well as digital marketing trends more broadly. So we hope you find it interesting. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Alcohol Free Radio. I am excited for you to meet Uzair Chutani from Acceler8 Labs, our digital marketing agency. And we're going to get into a variety of topics and where low and no and beverage and digital marketing intersect. So, Uzair, welcome.
Thank you for having me today, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for the time. Before we dive into a few topics that I'm interested in kind of chatting about, why don't you, for everybody's benefit, let us know a bit about your background, where you are, and how you got into starting and founding Acceler8 Labs.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. First off, I'm Uzair. I'm one of the co-founders of Acceler8 Labs, which is a performance marketing agency. Full disclosure, we do some work with Better Roads, and so we've had an opportunity to work in the non-alc space. Acceler8 Labs has been around for just over 6 years now. I had to at some point scratch the entrepreneurial itch. Prior to Acceler8 Labs, I'm an engineer turned marketer. And so that kind of makes the natural connection to performance marketing. I ended up spending, five of my formative years at Meta during the early days. Joined the week of the Facebook IPO back in 2012, seeing Mark Zuckerberg get married and buying Instagram and WhatsApp. And so had an opportunity to really be on that rocket ship for a great time. And from there, it was clear that, Meta was going to be a key player in digital marketing. We saw an opportunity with mid-sized businesses as well as enterprise across North America. And of course, over time with Instagram's growth, seeing direct-to-consumer e-commerce companies grow. And so we just wanted to sit at the intersection of all of that, get a chance to work with different companies. And, my co-founder and I had already spent 6 years together in the trenches at Meta, so he was the perfect partner. And that's sort of the Acceler8 origin story. It's now been 6 years, the team grows. We work across e-commerce, direct-to-consumer, as well as a number of interesting verticals. Not the least of which is our work with Better Roads, and so it's been an exciting run, and we're continuing forward.
Cool, yeah. I did want to mention that. So we got to know each other by doing the work with digital marketing and beverage. So it was. I just thought it would be great to have you on the show. We do talk a lot with producers, but to get a different perspective of somebody who knows about this, we're not talking about it kind of fresh, like everybody in this category does a lot, but from a different perspective. So with that in mind, I would love to hear a bit more about kind of as you went from Meta kind of on the industry side and getting into the building out of the agency, before we dive into kind of low and no, from a broader perspective, when we're looking at digital marketing and we're looking at e-commerce, but maybe that's a very broad topic. So we'll tighten it up a bit, maybe to consumer packaged goods, consumer B2C, and food and beverage, maybe with a slight slant towards, from a health and wellness side. There's been plant-based, there's all kinds of products in the beverage and food space. Can you talk a bit about kind of what you're seeing or what you've done in that area from an e-commerce perspective, in that category? Like what's exciting, what's going up and what's going down in that area?
Yeah, thank you for that, Chris. I think there's just a ton of different types of companies we come across. That is one of the luxuries of being in the space that we are. I'll start with sort of a more broader perspective, then I'll zoom into the category. We've worked with, all sorts of clients in health and some unique ones that, for example, one client that we worked with was called Vessel Health. And they would basically ship you these cards, and these cards would basically require you to, they would require a urine sample to determine sort of, what your diet looks like or sort of where you are. So to give you the opportunity to actually keep a much closer look and almost give you a small little lab sample on yourself to sort of, watch where your health is. And I share that example sort of as a zoomed out version of this because the investment in health and wellness continues to grow. There's more and more concern. And I think with technology enabling people to keep better track of, different health conditions or even just keeping
Mm.
tabs on sort of where they are, I think the category continues to grow. Zooming in a little bit further, I think in the beverage space, we are seeing an explosion of brands that are coming up with, that are low sugar beverages in the
Yeah.
non-alc space. We just see that investment continues to grow, and every few weeks we're talking to new brands in that space that are looking to break into things.
Okay. And maybe I'm realizing we're kind of diving in for the benefit of the audience. Maybe we'll talk a bit about digital marketing. What is that? So, digital marketing agencies, the all of the advertising that's moved online. Most people have probably heard about that relative to kind of standard or cable linear TV and what's happening from a digital perspective. Can you talk a bit about, like, for more layman, how would you describe digital marketing? What are the various areas that, if somebody is marketing digitally, that covers?
Absolutely. The way I think about digital marketing in the simplest of terms is that it is technology enabled marketing.
Okay.
Because digital marketing is starting to touch upon all sorts of different facets of how we think about marketing traditionally, including television, including where we are. Ultimately, all marketing is about, showing your ad or showing your product or your content where people's eyeballs are. Whether
Okay.
that's on a mobile screen, on a piece of mail that you get at home, on your television, technology can make your ads or your content or whatever solution you bring to the table just smarter, gives you more trackability, and allows you to understand better the impact of the content that
Sure.
you are putting online. And so that to me is digital marketing in a nutshell.
Okay. And, kind of going back a couple years, we know Meta in particular went through a process where, as Apple removed and put kind of some privacy changes in place, it reduced the ability for advertisers to target. Nevertheless, when I'm online, it seems they're still pretty targeted. I'm amazed on certain platforms how well they seem to be serving up relevant ads. Can you talk about? So we're talking about ads online. What are the major platforms that advertisers are using to get in front of consumers?
Yeah. So some of the major platforms, obviously Meta and Google continue to be large partners for most brands, especially in the e-commerce space, just their ability to reach wide audiences and drive intent.
Okay.
However, there's some really exciting growth across newer platforms, right? From Netflix and YouTube on the connected TV side of things to Walmart and Instacart on the retail media landscape, which actually is quite helpful for, companies like Better Roads as well as producers to be able to reach new customers when they're primed to purchase. And so there's lots of different platforms. And then going back to your comment about iOS 14, Chris, you're absolutely right. There's always new solutions. Digital marketing is so big that even as one challenge comes up, there's new opportunities, new vendors quickly pouncing on fixing and enabling that. So for the most part, advertisers and marketers have found ways around the Apple iOS changes that have come about.
Okay. And then I think most people are probably most familiar with ads, say, on their social channels, Facebook, Instagram. Are you seeing the rise, any that have risen and are kind of continue to go strong and showing kind of longer term survivability, any that are starting to wane, and then any new entrants? Like, give us a bit of the landscape in terms of kind of how things are moving in that space.
One quick point of clarification, Chris. Are you speaking specifically about platforms or brands?
No, platforms. So I'm
I
kind
see.
of, let's stay on the, so I'm thinking, say Instagram and Facebook, but kind of going, and Google,
Yeah.
going beyond that. Like, what's steady? You mentioned kind of non-linear, there's the living room platforms with, I've seen more discussions around things like Freevee and Tubi and some of those channels. So kind of get a sense of the landscape. A lot of the people, hopefully, who are listening are brands, and they're trying to get in front of their customers. doing various things with e-commerce. So I think it'd be interesting to hear what you see as the areas that are kind of front and center and kind of mainline things you got to do just to be in the space. But any trends you're seeing in terms of kind of expand on that.
Absolutely. So I would say that one of the platforms that has become a non-negotiable more recently with content is TikTok,
Okay.
especially if there's any impact on Gen Z that a brand is hoping to have. The TikTok content consumption can be measured in hours rather than, minutes that we would typically measure for digital platforms. So there is just
Wow.
potential there. I think that there's different sort of use cases for a lot of different platforms as well. So while TikTok has very broad-based appeal, Reddit can be a really great platform where people go to learn different things. Quora is similar as well, and so often brands will actually have communities that are dedicated to them, where people come together, they discuss flavors, they discuss content, they discuss packaging, they discuss all sorts of things because the brand could be beloved. And we see this across some of our partners too. And so there's platforms that are continuing to emerge. Instacart I mentioned earlier, but I think that's
Yep.
what worth mentioning again, simply because of how relevant it is for producers. Oftentimes, even Uber, for example, these platforms are working with retail partners as well, like Costco, for example, who are offering certain perks or partnerships or offers that then can be taken advantage of by brands and producers who might want to advertise people when they are primed to purchase. And so there's lots of these unique platforms that are coming in,
Yep.
and that have their own space in addition to sort of the mass media like Google's and Facebook's and TikTok's of the world.
Right. Okay. So let's talk a bit about e-commerce. So a lot of this digital marketing is in the context of e-commerce, especially for low and no ALC brands. Um, can you kind of talk through post-pandemic? Um, everybody was shopping online. Pandemic didn't have much choice, but there was a trend towards increased online shopping that was kind of longer term behind that. What are you seeing? Like, how do you kind of tease apart the explosion of e-commerce through the pandemic and then the hangover after, but that longer term trend, is that still, are people still moving more to online? And let's focus on North America. Um, or did the pandemic kind of kill it?
Yeah, I think that there's some really interesting trends that we see here. Of course, the e-commerce trend, the idea of ordering food, I think we've seen tremendous growth sort of in some of those subsets within the e-commerce world. Specifically in reference to products, e-commerce continues to grow, but some of that growth was pulled forward in the pandemic period. So by no means is e-commerce declining, but in-store still plays an important role. Human beings have omni-channel experiences,
Yep.
and so we think e-commerce will continue to grow, but it's not going to continue to grow at the same frantic pace as it was during the pandemic. I think the convenience aspect is still an important one that people see. And so that's sort of what we're seeing in the market. And we think about our advertising the same way as well, that we need to have an omni-channel approach that looks after our work in store as well as online orders.
Okay. So, with that in mind, some of the things you talked about with respect to uh, beverage and food and beverage, as well as kind of where things are going on the digital marketing side in terms of platforms, and having a chance to work with us over the last couple of years and getting a feel for this particular one way to look at it as a subset of health and wellness and food and beverage within digital marketing. What relative to the broad set, your experience with Meta, your experience with Acceler8 Labs, your other clients, is there anything you can say for everyone's listening? What kind of stands out for you in terms of observations of the low and no space that's maybe different, both maybe more challenging, but also where there might be more interesting opportunities for people that are for producers and makers that are trying to reach customers that might be interested in low and no?
Yeah, I think that you folks are just really brave that work in this space, and I mean that jokingly, but half
Jokingly.
jokingly. Yeah, I'll say brave.
Okay,
Look,
not a word.
the challenge is let's talk. So
Yeah.
iOS 14, of course, that makes things difficult. The platforms don't understand the no and the low space because the ad policies constantly affect our partners. Where it's like, oh, you've been banned because you're not okay. We're not. We don't have alcohol content. They constantly tag us. You ship a product that's going to freeze on its way to Minnesota or Wisconsin or Toronto, and so obviously shipping direct to consumer brands, shipping products in cold weather. That's why I say that you are brave to figure out all of this and work with all of these challenges first of all, and that's something that we've seen brands mostly figure out over the last few years. But that has been a big challenge in sort of even before we get to the marketing. Growing a brand is hard enough. Doing it, one arm tied behind your back is it requires some bravery, I think.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, get into some of the hopefully the positive sides of where we're seeing some of this. So thanks. We'll be right back. Hey there, this is Chris Becker. I wanted to spend a minute and tell you a bit about our Better Without mobile app. We talk a bit about it on the show, but it's really a great resource for people that want to learn and find out where they can try and experience all the great beverages that are coming into the space of better for you beverages, particularly non-alc and alcohol-free. This includes beer, wine. You can search by different categories, sparkling, RTDs, find out descriptions, photography, calories, everything you want to know, and best of all, where to buy it based on your location. Or you can search different places and find out all the different restaurants and stores where you can find the different products that you love, or go online, obviously, to betterroads.com, but also other sites that we share links to let you know where you can get different products. So it's really anything that's out there in the space. It gives you one resource to learn and educate and test and try. It allows you to share. So whether you like a location that has some really good beverages that maybe others who are experimenting with drinking less or whatever want to learn about, you can share it right off the app. You can share products right off the app to all your friends and any channel you want. So I really encourage you to check it out. It's betterwithout.app, or if you go to betterroads.com, you'll see in our community a place to learn more about the app and download it. It's free, and give it a try. We hope you like it. Thanks. Hey everybody, welcome back. We're talking here with Uzair Chutani from Acceler8 Labs, and we were getting into some of the challenges with low and no. I think I've told this joke / reality a few times, maybe even on this podcast, but if you want to lose money in e-commerce, sell something that's heavy, made with liquid, encased in glass. The customers don't understand because it's a new category where there's a flavor expectation gap because it's not alcohol. And that's something we work with and educate consumers on. And as you said before the break, if that's not enough, it freezes because there's no alcohol. So the high temperature freeze point. But having said that, there are ways, and we've worked hard on the operation side to make that work. Part of that is scale, continued growth. Part of that is just operational excellence. So, once you've got that, and a lot of our makers, with a small set of SKUs, you can work with a really good 3PL and scale that effectively. So there are ways around that. The e-commerce industry, Amazon ships all kinds of heavy stuff. So it's a challenge, no doubt, but it is solvable. So with that on that side, relative to what you see in other parts of e-commerce, so not the some of those challenges, what stands out for you in terms of this category, the types of customers, the types of ads that resonate, more, and even more broadly, besides direct, primary ads, the organic content or terms that you see that draw people into this category? Like, what are you seeing in terms of what are people searching for out there where you see that it connects and resonates that can bring people into low and no?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one I'm always excited to talk about with our partners, including Better Roads. We are seeing a ton of growth in searchability for terms and trends that are specifically, people looking for non-alc options. What does that growth look like? It's triple figures. So it's over 100% year-over-year growth in terms that are non-alc wine related, and so what we are seeing is an increased awareness. Okay. Recently, we read some research that shared with us that primarily people are looking for non-alc for health reasons, participation from folks that choose not to drink, hosting and events around holidays. And so there's an increased awareness, and people are choosing the no and low options. And so that gives us a lot of excitement because that just shows you the industry growth and what's possible. So the other side of the coin is this is a great space to be, right? To see 100% plus year-over-year growth, it sets for some, really aggressive market growth and an opportunity for the brands that are in this space.
Okay, interesting. So I like that in the sense that it seems to be tied to people looking for health and wellness. It's tied into, knowing about the category. There's a lot of news out there too about, like, we try to focus on the positive aspects and the choice because, by far a lot of our customers, or most of our customers, also drink. So it's often about moderation, not abstinence, if that's their choice. But you're also seeing negative news about alcohol. So the myth of the one glass of wine a day and things like that. Is there any way for you guys to see, is any of it coming from that? It's from the kind of, hey, we're hearing this, so like they're trying to get to it from a different direction.
Yeah, not as much on our side. One of the
Okay.
things we do see is people looking for healthier options rather than because of the negativity.
Okay.
And it's generally from the older population that are choosing perhaps to cut back. And frankly, even from the health and wellness perspective, it isn't generally people that are completely moving towards abstinence, but folks that occasionally would like a drink or are wanting to have an option that's no or low alc, right?
Right. Okay. So full step back. Uzair Chutani, Acceler8 Digital Labs, guru, expert, former Meta, early employee,
Hardly.
number whatever. Tell us the future of digital marketing for certain. In 5 years, what will this look like? What will be some things that are still in place that are happening today that are tried and true? What are some things that you think advertisers and makers that are trying to reach customers will need to be doing or will be doing more? And what do you think has been here around that may not be here as much? And you don't have to answer all three. More just getting a sense of the vectors of what you think's coming and going.
Yeah, I'll share a couple different things across those questions. So I think Gen AI, it is no secret that that is very quickly expanding into all areas of what we do. It
Yeah.
still feels like the first or like the first of the first innings of of Gen AI, and so I think that'll play a massive role over time. The way brands speak to consumers is going to change and evolve rapidly. Um, Already we are seeing the rise of things like UGC content,
Okay.
brands speaking directly to their consumers without establishing trust by speaking through one of their friends or somebody else that they might trust may go away over time. People want to hear from other people endorsing. This is basically taking reviews into the Gen AI age. And so from our vantage point, I think that trust needs to be established upfront. A brand that is just speaking into a mic is going to be ignored.
Okay.
Over time, I believe that, and this goes, maybe I'll start with a little bit about history, right? Television ads over the years, over the last few decades, were not as personal as perhaps some of the digital options, and that's changing with CTV. But this trend of having more personalized experiences in ads and landing pages and conversions, those are really critical. Over time, if I had to make a wild prediction in 5 years, just like our For You feeds on our TikToks or our Facebook feeds or our Instagram feeds
Yeah.
look very different for each person, a single landing page might look very different for you and I, Chris,
Yeah.
where the entire experience is processed by AI based on all of the different behaviors on the internet that it already knows, and the entire landing page is built on the fly, just like Meta's feed is, just like TikTok's feed is, and you and I may have very different experiences, and those experiences will be tailored towards the kind of product you might buy, the kind of content you might enjoy, what you may want to read about, what might be the best offer to give to you versus to me, knowing what I've already purchased before, knowing the kind of things I like and see, knowing my family and the ages of my kids. And so I think all of those things could potentially be inputs into the future for every landing page to be a different experience. And to me, that will be personalization at scale, which was the promise of Meta and TikTok and these platforms, about that feed, but how do we sort of take it to the entire internet? And I
Yeah.
think Gen AI will be core to that.
Well, I know. Yeah, and it's interesting to see how social's really leapfrogged, because in the web content management space, they've been talking about personalization so long that people in the web content management space now no longer talk about it because it's become pejorative. Um, but social kind of leapfrogged them, and then it was left behind. It never got to kind of implement what you're talking about. And social was in its infancy when it was first starting to be talked about on the web content management side, landing pages, and then social just roared right past them. Um, and then with the generative AI, one is for content. Can you talk a bit about? So there's the content creation side, so it's more directly hitting your groups. How are you creating content and advertisements, and you see that and hear that with the strikes, the writer strike in Hollywood, and what they were fighting over. Um, but then on the customer service side, so you've got the content generative AI on the content creation on the one side, and then you've got, let's say, chatbots, just to kind of put a simple phrase. Um, are you seeing, like, you can go into ChatGPT and start chatting about, hey, tell me about non-alc, and how is this healthy, and is it healthy, and do they just replace it with sugar, and so it's no different? I read about that. So you might start having a conversation with ChatGPT, and then you might have a chatbot on our website, for example, that's meant to help you with product selection and choice. Like, do you see it getting there? I forget the founder of Bumble got in trouble because they were asked to predict the future, and they kind of said, well, in the future world of dating, your AI avatar will meet with other people's AI avatars, and then they'll decide if you should meet the real person. And they were like, what the hell are you talking about? So is there a parallel here, which is a little bit less creepy and a little bit more practical around, AI interactions that are happening with real people might be able to do a handoff to say, hey, you're interested in non-alc, and it seems like you're curious about wines, but you're not quite sure. Here, I'm going to hand you off to a marketplace, and then that chatbot could pick up and say, oh, okay, so you're interested. Well, tell us more, and we'll put up together some selections for you. Maybe, so yeah, the personalized landing page, but even maybe a personalized AI, I won't even say AI, a personalized customer chat experience.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Historically, how we've accomplished this, Chris, is quiz style landing pages where you would go through 6 or 8 questions
Yeah.
and then it'll give you some offer. I think the chatbot's already here. We do actually see some businesses, using certain tools that allow you to handle sort of the customer service questions up front. All the basic ones, FAQ type questions that the bot will answer, and then it'll pass you off to a real person. Some of the banks are using it as well here. And so we are already seeing that. I think the AI is still pretty preliminary in terms of what it can answer right now. I think that depth is, I think, what you're referring to, is where it'll be able to go much deeper and be able to address sort of, much deeper points. But I absolutely think that, the AI conversations will get much, much deeper. And again, it'll affect sort of customer service in a positive way, which I feel like everyone in North America is complaining about almost every single brand. So I think this will be a welcome change.
Yeah.
And then, go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. No, please.
I was going to say, I wanted to touch upon something earlier that you said around Gen AI from a creating content perspective. Today, it requires designers to, first write a storyboard, then get an approval, then go back and find a content creator, then go create that content, and then come back and then sort of, all these revisions. AI can make that much, much faster, right? We're using, Gen AI tools to write storyboards. We're using them to generate content still and videos. Videos are just starting now. So we're sort of on the bleeding edge of that, because we really believe that the personalization part will be the key unlock with Gen AI for marketing. And it'll truly allow us on a one-to-one level. Personalization has always been around. Meta's been talking about that since I was there over a decade ago. But this is going to be not at 300,000 people, but at a one-to-one. And in order to produce creative at that pace, Chris, where we might be running 20,000 impressions to 10,000 people in a day, just give them unique experiences. That's where the velocity of Gen AI will be crucial to deliver those personalized experiences.
Okay, that's interesting. And then, yeah, I want to touch on your point about, like kind of the AI. I'll call it fatigue. Like it's been out there since kind of the Chat GDP 4.0 or 3.0. I can't remember the initial release that kind of got the mainstream media's attention. Um, I know from my experience when I was starting to get into that, like I'm 53. I was like, went through all these different trends with technology, UGC, social, whatever. And then it was like this came along, and I was like looking at my calendar. I was like, oh, fuck, I don't even want to learn a new thing. I don't give a shit. I don't want to learn a new thing, so I'm not doing it. And I went through that for like a few months, and then I was like, that's probably the wrong attitude. So I leaned into it, and you kind of have to get past the kind of veneer and the bullshit that you read and kind of dig into it. And then it pulled me and it kind of grabbed me. And now I'm more interested. I'm really trying to encourage our team to even just educate themselves and test and try, use it in different ways. We highlighting where it's already integrated into our tools. So Shopify's really leaned into this on their last quarterly call. They mentioned it, and I think it helped with their 15% bump they got that day. Canva, I think you're seeing on the content creation side is leaned into it. And I'm even seeing on the enterprise side where they're now competing with Adobe, where 6 months ago they wouldn't even been on the list. So, and then, some of the other tools that we use. So, but it's that you kind of have to get past that first thing. And I'm saying this for anybody who's listening that's maybe a maker, who's an entrepreneur, who's running a business and who's trying to keep the lights on. And this comes along. My first reaction was, it was just one more thing. I was like, my first response was, it's better not to, I'm not even going to open that door. And there's a rationale for that. But I opened it, and then I think what I'm learning is, no, this is actually going to help. You got it, but it's going to take some time. So, so I just wanted to pick up on that because it's been these last few months. I've been like, holy crap. Like, and then it's going to take years, but it's definitely connecting in a bunch of different ways. So, Uzair, before we leave, I want to make sure you get a chance to talk a bit more about Acceler8 Labs, what you're doing, who you are, and how can people get in touch with you.
Amazing. Thank you, Chris. Just before I get into that, I'll share a quick tip on AI. It's something we've seen. Cool. So I'm like you, very much, with wearing a million hats, trying to do a million things. Just in the door, keep it closed because I need to keep my focus. What helped was, downloading the app on my phone and just talking to it during my evening hours and just playing with it. And the other thing that we do, which I encourage, people that are listening to try, is at our company and our weekly, all hands, everyone goes around the horn and says, hey, what's the one thing you've learned about AI this week, each week? Yeah. And so folks are able to, teach us new things as well. So we each learn from each other, different tools, different things that are happening. So anyways, I wanted to just share that tip that really helped our company.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that was one of the things. And the other thing was engaging with it with my kids, because my kids don't have any hangups yet. So I was able, right. Like, hey, and so like my daughter named my Chat GDP voice avatar Sky, which is her favorite character from Paw Patrol. Right. So, and then it kind of humanized it. And then they gave me different perspectives just because, they're kids. So it was interesting. That was another one, but he gave me a good one. We're having a team meeting in person next week. So I'm going to give everyone some homework about coming to the in the live meeting with what have you learned about AI. So thank you for that. Now back to Acceler8 Labs. Tell us a bit more, and then how can people get a hold of you if they're interested?
Thank you. So Acceler8 Labs is a digital marketing agency. We work with e-commerce companies primarily. That was sort of where we started. And today we work with omni-channel retailers, born online, direct-to-consumer e-commerce companies across many different verticals. Of course, with our work with Better Roads, we work in the non-alc space as well as other CPG brands that we partner with closely. So this is a space that is very near and dear to us, and we'd love to continue working with partners in this space. And so I'll share that from our side. The way to get in touch with me, you can just email me. My email is uzair@acceler8labs.com. You can reach me on LinkedIn and Instagram as well. It's just Uzair Chutani. on both. And so those are some of the best ways to reach me. And I'd be happy to talk shop and even share some of the things that we've learned, and hopefully that's helpful.
That's awesome. Uzair, Chutani, Acceler8 Labs, thanks so much for joining us.
All right, thank you, Chris.